I had never heard of the village before. It wasn't on any map, nor was it mentioned in any travel guide or online forum. The only reason I even found out about it was because of a crumpled letter I discovered in my late grandfather's chest, written in faded ink and signed with trembling hands. The letter mentioned a place called Newood, tucked deep within the northern forests, where the trees forget how to whisper and shadows move on their own. It sounded poetic or insane, maybe both. Curiosity got the best of me. After weeks of digging through regional archives and asking old locals at forgotten gas stations, I finally pieced together enough clues to track it down. I left early on a fog-drenched morning with a small backpack, a camera, and that eerie letter folded in my pocket. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Honestly, I wasn't sure myself. The trail disappeared faster than I expected. The forest thickened with every step, swallowing sound and time. Birds were absent. Not quiet, absent. Even my footsteps seemed muted, like the ground itself didn't want to remember them. When I finally saw the first sign of civilization, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like trespassing. An old wooden arch, mostly devoured by moss and rot, marked the entrance to the village. The name Nearwood was carved across the top in almost illegible script, half erased by time. Past the arch, a narrow path led to a collection of withering homes, sagging with age, roofs caved in, doors hanging crooked. No sign of life, not even decay, just stillness. What disturbed me most wasn't the silence. It was the feeling that the village had been waiting for me. I walked down the main road, or what remained of it, the crunch of dried leaves underfoot sounding too loud in the heavy air. Windows stared back at me like blind eyes. A swing creaked slowly in the breeze, though I felt no wind. I raised my camera and snapped a photo of the first house. The lens fogged for no reason, like breath had passed over it. I wiped it and tried again. This time, it worked. But when I reviewed the image, something strange happened. The window of the house I had photographed, empty when I looked at it with my own eyes, now had a faint silhouette inside. A figure, motionless, watching. I stood there frozen, staring at the photo on my camera screen. The figure in the window was faint but undeniable, tall, slim, its outline distorted like heat rising from pavement. It hadn't been there a second earlier. My fingers trembled as I lowered the camera and looked back at the house. The window was empty again. No movement, no sign of life. I told myself it was a trick of the light, or maybe dust on the lens. I moved on. The village seemed larger than it looked from the outside. There were more houses deeper in, each more decayed than the last. Some doors hung open as if someone had just stepped out moments ago. Others were shut tight, sealed with wooden planks or rusted chains. One of them had strange markings scratched into the wood, symbols I didn't recognize, crude yet deliberate. They made my skin crawl. As I wandered further in, I found what looked like a town square. At the center stood a weathered stone well, its bricks cracked and covered in thick green moss. Beside it was a rusted tricycle, half buried in the dirt, its wheels still slowly spinning. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't seen wind. But it spun, slow and steady. That was the first time I heard it, faint laughter. A child's laughter, echoing from somewhere deep within the village. I whipped around. Nothing. No footsteps. No child. Just that suffocating stillness. I walked into a house that still had most of its structure intact. Inside, dust blanketed every surface like gray snow. The furniture was old but preserved. Chairs overturned as if left in a hurry. Plates still on the dining table, one shattered on the floor. I found a family photo on the mantel, warped by time. A man, a woman, two children, smiling. But something about their eyes unsettled me. The smiles didn't reach them. In the bedroom, I found an old trunk. It took me several tries to pry it open. The hinges screamed as if resisting. Inside were children's toys, a cracked porcelain doll missing one eye, and a leather-bound journal. The cover was stiff with age, and several pages were stuck together. The entries were dated from nearly 70 years ago. March 3rd. He came again, the tall man. I told Mama, but she just cried and said not to speak of him. He watches from the trees at night. My brother says he speaks to him when we're asleep. I think he's lying. Or maybe not. March 9th. No one's left. The last family disappeared 2 nights ago. Papa says we'll be next if we don't stay inside. I keep hearing knocking at the windows. But when I look, there's no one there. March 12th. I woke up in the woods. I don't remember how I got there. The trees were whispering. I swear they were whispering my name. I flipped to the final entry. March 15th. I'm not me anymore. I don't remember my name. The village won't let me leave. None of us can. He won't let us go. The handwriting became erratic, like the writer had lost control. Ink smeared across the page in thick, panicked strokes. Suddenly, a loud creak echoed from above. I froze. My eyes shot to the ceiling. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps moved across the floorboards above me, directly overhead. The journal slipped from my hand. I wasn't alone in that house. My breath caught in my throat as I backed out of the room, careful not to make a sound. The footsteps stopped. I turned toward the door to leave, only to find it slowly swinging shut, without anyone touching it. It latched with a soft click. That's when I heard it again. The laughter. Closer this time. Just outside the room. The laughter turned into whispers. Soft at first, barely audible over the thudding of my own heartbeat. But then louder, layered, like multiple voices overlapping in hushed arguments. I couldn't make out what they were saying. Only that they were angry. Or afraid, maybe both. I backed away from the door slowly, holding my breath. The old floorboards beneath my feet groaned. And the moment they did, the whispers stopped. Abruptly, like someone had snapped their fingers. Then came silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears, begging you not to move. I stood there, frozen, listening. A faint creak above, then another. Something was still walking. Circling, waiting, suddenly. A loud thud dropped directly overhead, followed by rapid footsteps racing toward the stairs. I didn't wait to see who or what it was. I grabbed my backpack, flung the door open, and ran outside into the thick fog that had now crept in like a living thing. The village looked different. I know it sounds insane, but the layout had changed. The paths weren't the same. Houses I'd passed earlier were now facing different directions. One building looked like it had been burned down long ago, even though I clearly remembered it being intact just minutes before. It felt like the village itself was shifting, breathing. I ran toward the well at the center, thinking I could retrace my steps from there. But as I reached it, I noticed something new. Fresh footprints in the dirt. Small, barefoot, leading away from the well toward the tree line. And they weren't mine. I followed them, against all reason. Something in me said I had to. They led to a small chapel I hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a cluster of crooked trees. The doors were ajar. One slowly creaked back and forth in the windless air. The moment I stepped inside, the smell hit me. Rot, like damp earth, and something long dead. The chapel was in ruin. Benches shattered, altar burned, a massive crack splitting the stone floor down the middle. But what caught my eye was the writing. Hundreds of names scratched into the walls, all over. Most were repeated again and again, but one name stood out, written in larger letters across the altar. Ellis. It was my grandfather's name. A cold shiver crept down my spine. I turned around quickly and saw it, a figure standing in the back of the chapel, not moving, tall, no face. Just a long dark silhouette, almost blending into the shadows. Its head tilted slightly, like it was studying me. I blinked. It was gone. I backed out of the chapel and turned to run, but the village was gone, literally vanished. All around me was thick forest, no houses, no well, no path, just trees, and that unbearable silence. I turned in circles, trying to get my bearings, but everything was unfamiliar. Then slowly, I began to hear it again. The whispers, except this time, they were inside my head, clearer, closer. You came back. He remembers. We never left. A scream caught in my throat as I stumbled backward, tripping over a root and falling hard. I scrambled up, panting, my pulse racing. Something was coming. I could feel it, not in the air, but deep in my bones. A presence, watching, closing in. And then I heard a voice. Not a whisper. A clear, low voice from somewhere behind me. Why did you return, Elias? But my name isn't Elias. It's Jacob. Or, at least I thought it was. I stood there, frozen, the voice echoing inside my skull like a memory that didn't belong to me. Why did you return, Elias? The forest around me pulsed with unnatural energy, silent but alive. I turned around, half expecting someone to be standing behind me. No one. But the forest had changed again. The trees were tighter now, their gnarled branches like twisted fingers closing in. I couldn't see the sky anymore, just darkness above, as if night had fallen in the span of a heartbeat. I started to run, crashing through undergrowth, ducking under low branches, trying to escape. From what, I didn't know, but every cell in my body screamed at me to get away. My legs carried me blindly through the woods until I saw it again. The village, back where it shouldn't be, sitting quietly, waiting. But it was different this time. Wrong. The houses were now glowing faintly from within, flickering with a cold blue light. Shapes moved behind broken windows, shadows pacing, watching. The well in the center now overflowed with a thick, dark liquid that looked more like oil than water. And above it all, standing in the square, was him. The figure, tall, faceless, cloaked in something that seemed to ripple like smoke and shadow. It turned slowly, as if aware of me without eyes. I tried to run again, but my feet wouldn't move. They sank slightly into the earth, as though the ground itself had decided to hold me still. Then the memories began. Not mine, but someone else's. Visions flashed in my mind. A young boy running through the village streets, laughter in the air. A family sitting at a dinner table, smiling. A village full of life and warmth. Before the darkness came. Before he arrived. Before people started disappearing. Before the trees began to whisper names in the night. I saw a man, my grandfather, Elias, standing before the chapel, pleading with something in the shadows, offering something, a deal. Spare the village. Take me. He had tried to save them, but it wasn't enough. The darkness took the village anyway. And now it had called me back. Not by accident, but by blood. I was the last link. The figure raised an arm and pointed at me, and instantly the wind picked up. The blue lights inside the houses flared, and dozens of shadowy forms spilled into the streets. They didn't walk. They floated, shimmering echoes of those who once lived here. Hollow-eyed, mouths open in silent screams. I finally moved, sprinting through the chaos, dodging grasping hands and faces filled with sorrow and rage. They weren't trying to harm me. They were trying to pull me in, make me stay, become one of them. I reached the well at the center of the village, now bubbling and hissing like it was alive. The journal I had found earlier was lying at its edge, pages flapping violently in the wind. I grabbed it. Inside the back cover, hastily scribbled, was a line I hadn't noticed before. Only by remembering can you leave. Speak the truth of who you are. I shouted my name. Jacob! Nothing. Then it hit me. This wasn't just a horror story. This was inheritance. A legacy twisted by darkness. I was never meant to find the village. I was meant to replace my grandfather, to pay the price he failed to fully give. My breath shook as I whispered, I am Elias's blood, but I am not his debt. The ground cracked beneath me. A burst of wind knocked me backward. Light exploded from the well, blinding and cold. And then, silence. When I opened my eyes, I was in the woods again. Morning light filtered through the trees. Birds were singing. The village was gone, completely erased. I stumbled out to the road, my body aching, my head spinning. I flagged down a passing car, barely able to explain where I had come from. Later, back home, I reviewed the photos on my camera. All were black, except one. The photo of the first house, the one with the silhouette in the window. But now, there were two figures standing side by side, and one of them was me.